I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James Whitefield, Yates Meanakhimes.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
Was I looking at you forever there?
No, my cat just jumped over the makeshift barrier I just created, and it's the younger one, and she has like no respect for work. So this should be a very interesting episode.
Good, a nice cold open here on the Patriots Daily podcast this lovely Wednesday. It's Rams week, so thanks for joining us. We're powered by PrizePicks and GameTime here on Pat's Daily. As you know, we'll get to them later, but first, it's a mailbag episode of the podcast. Normally, we've started these with a little something, a little film breakdown, a little makeup from earlier in the week, but we're all caught up right now. So we're going to answer as many of your Patriots questions as possible as they head into this week. Pat's sitting at 3-7, Rams at 4-5 after their loss on Monday night. Patriots looking to get on a little bit of a win streak here. We spoke to Gerard Mayo, spoke to Drake May, spoke to Hunter Henry. There was an open locker room session today. Yannick Ngakoue spoke. So a busy day down in Foxborough. Before we get into the questions, couple absences off the top was Marcellus Dial, Isaiah Bolden. Help me out with the other two.
Isaiah Bolden, Marcellus Dial, Dietrich Wise.
Dietrich.
I'm going to pull up my actual tweet from it just
there was
so
a fourth one, and I
know Caleb Jones was absent again, and Sione Takitaki. So the secondary and the defensive line, particularly when you look at depth, have taken some hits at least today.
Yep, for sure. Looking at the comments as well. Appreciate you guys on the congratulations on the SI job. That's another thing we can mention. I am writing for Sports Illustrated now. Some breaking and trending news stuff over there started this week, so I appreciate the kind words. And if you probably already saw, I will be here on Pat's Daily doing Patriots coverage at least throughout the end of the season, and then we're going to kind of assess things from there. But you don't lose me yet. You're still stuck with me as of right now as the Patriots continue on. But thank you guys. Appreciate it. And I hope you guys will continue reading my stuff. We'll be here for all the video stuff, the Patriots coverage, Pat's Daily, and post-game and whatnot. So thank you guys for that. Now let's get into it. We got Patriots questions. You got a bunch of them in on Twitter. And if you have any in the chat, feel free to throw them in as well. And we'll get to as many as possible over the next half hour or so. I want to start with this one, A, because Old Man Mob is always in the chat, but B, we always get questions about T. Higgins, and he was a topic of discussion for us, both on the pod and just behind closed doors, hanging out at the stadium the last couple of weeks, between me and Taylor, and it's T. Higgins. So should the Patriots be worried about his injury history this season, and should that deter them from going to sign him this offseason?
So I actually talked, I think it was Evan last week about this, and that's kind of where I've been, where it's like I don't really want to throw a bag at somebody with this injury history. You don't even know what kind of deal, if he wants to absolutely get paid, even though obviously, he's missed some time this year. Evan brought up a good point that these soft tissue injuries, especially, all the games he's missed, it almost kind of feels like a situation where it was like, you know what? You guys kind of screwed me. I don't have any guaranteed money after this year. You know what? I'm not going to risk getting hurt. I'm going to sit these games out.
Yeah.
And, you can make the argument you want a competitor, and, the Bengals aren't totally out of the playoff hunt yet. So, you'd probably like them on the field. But I think I honestly, this is one of those where I feel like I just don't know. And that's the best answer I can give. Now, at the same time, I've been saying I want the Patriots to draft somebody like a Ted McMillan, like someone with a rare skill set who's cheap. And like quarterbacks, if you have those kinds of guys under contract for 4 years, that's just huge and gives you a ton of flexibility in terms of your cap and all those kinds of things. But at the same time, this room, I know they got Kendrick Bourne for another couple of years, at least, contract-wise. KJ Osborne's probably going to be gone. I think this room needs a leader with the history of success in the league. Like Kendrick Bourne, yes, he has been on successful teams. He's had flashes and things like that, but he's never had a full season where you're like, damn, that Kendrick Bourne guy, you really got a game plan around him. T. Higgins has been to a Super Bowl. He's made some incredible plays. I know everyone questions, can he really be a number one? Just look at his tape. There are things, when I was a scout at Syracuse, there were some guys where they were with the first 5 to 10 plays, you can usually tell whether a player is good or not. So it's it doesn't, that's obviously consistency matters, but a lot of the time it's just if this dude is doing something that you don't really see happen very often, That's a special talent. T. Higgins, like the way he works the sideline, the fact that he's the kind of guy with the size to beat jams on slants, and then the speed to actually take it to the crib from like 80 yards out. Like those are rare traits. So from that perspective, T. Higgins also seems like he's very good. Anytime I've seen him speak to reporters, seems like he's a really well-spoken guy who could be the leader for a younger room. I really wouldn't mind the T. Higgins thing, as long as if it was injuries, there were some incentives laid in that would make me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I'm kind of starting to tip more towards, you know what, if T. Higgins is available, go get him. Obviously, like I say, every year draft the guy as well. But in a room where you have so many young talents, like you got Pop, you got Booty, you got Baker, you got Polk, guys who are going to be under contract for a while, I think you do need that dominant alpha guy, but at the same time, you have young guys to develop as well behind him. So I think it'd be pretty cool if they were like 2 deep at least, and you could have a pretty significant rotation or at least backup plans in case T. Higgins does have to miss time.
Yeah, I like that way of looking at it. I've been Team T, since it sort of became a realization that Cincinnati's probably not going to be able to pay both him and Jamar Chase. But I also do totally understand. What do you say?
Or simply won't.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, I would go for it. I still think they should go for it. I do think the injuries can be a concern, but at the end of the day, too, it's like, what you just mentioned. It's a guy who he knows he's not getting paid out there. He doesn't have to exert all of himself. The Bengals aren't winning right now, so you might as well sit these things out. And on one hand, yeah, you question the competitiveness there, but at the end of the day, it's football. It's a business. If he wants to come get paid, come here and develop that.
And the Bengals made him the first player in I don't even know how long to get franchise tagged and not get a new deal or anything. Like they really did kind of do him dirty. So you know what? I'm willing to. These teams have info and they have intel and they're able to gather information. So hopefully they can get some information to be like, hey, he's really not that much of an injury risk. He probably was just protecting himself. If that's the case, I really don't mind, because 100%. It's one thing if he invests in you and does right by you, but another when they're just like, yeah, we're going to keep you hostage. Like, bump that, bro. I'm staying healthy and I'm making my bag next year.
And I trust him as a true number one guy. People say he's the number 2 to Jamar Chase, but really I see them as 2 number ones. He's not a number 2 wide receiver.
And he was the number 1 before Jamar Chase was drafted. Like people actually, I think they forget that T and Burrow were drafted at the same time. Like that was his guy before he got obviously Chase, who was his guy in college.
Of course.
And there were a ton of games that Jamar Chase missed last year, and T. Higgins had to be the guy. So it's not like there's no tape of him having to be that guy. And if you want to leave T. Higgins one-on-one, most of the time, I think you're going to win that battle on the offensive side of the ball.
Exactly. So we're team T here as long as he's healthy, and I think you mentioned right there that they can gather that intel and insight to not overexert themselves or overpay if they do think the injury is going to be a concern. You also mentioned Ted McMillan in that answer, so that's why I want to go to this one. With seemingly rising concerns and questions about Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell at the next level, and Drake seemingly offsetting some of the offensive line deficiencies this week, is Ted McMillan, Luther Burden, I won't even say Travis Hunter's name in this conversation, but is a wide receiver. Is it time for them to really consider taking a wide receiver over an offensive lineman at the top of the draft?
I think it's all going to be about value, to be honest. Now I think you're in a position, you've got the quarterback. You're finally in a spot where it's like, all right, we do have multiple needs. Let's just see where the draft board falls. I think free agency is going to be a big part of that. If you can get, I feel like they probably skew younger at left tackle because we know Gerard Mayo does like Vidarian Lowe. He's under contract for another year. Thank you, Courtney, for the compliment on the haircut. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I think that the better plan probably for tackle, like I said, you have a veteran there, a guy who's got a deal, but also, he's not so locked in that you probably wouldn't want to get a young guy just in case he leaves the next season. Maybe Vidarian balls out next year and gets a good contract, or, what have you. Right. Wide receiver, again, is the spot where I would like them to have a proven guy who can really command that room and command respect from other defenses. So is it a possibility? Hell yeah. I mean, if Ted McMillan is there and you think he's a better value, Will Campbell and those guys are off the board, whatever, Kelvin Banks, if they like those guys as tackles, then yeah, sure, pull the trigger. But you also, I think, want to refrain from having too much depth, because that's why, drafting just for need or drafting just by value, it's not always the right move. Because if you have 3 quarterbacks you like, spending a first-round pick on a quarterback is a bad investment, because it doesn't matter if he's a good player or whatever. you already had depth at the position and you probably could have addressed something else. But then at the same time, if it's like the Cole Strange situation where, probably shouldn't have drafted a guard just because of the positional value, you can argue that till, kingdom come or whatever. I know I did at the time. But yeah, I think it's really going to come down to what happens in free agency. And then based on that, really how the board falls for the Patriots, wherever they end up.
I'm starting to not starting to. I've been nervous about the Patriots and their lack of ability to draft a wide receiver. And I love Ted McMillan. Luther Burden out of Missouri is pretty good too. When you look at Jalen Polk and Javon Baker this season, two guys that we were high on, struggling. I know it's super duper early, but do we trust them to go back into the well and take a wide receiver again? And Elliott is a little bit of a
high pick.
Jalen Polk was a high pick. He was 37.
I know.
I get it.
He also got popping booty 2 years ago.
That's true. Now I was kind of gonna carry over into that where Booty seemed like it missed. No, it seemed like it missed last year, but he's turned himself around and become a solid player. And Pop, while hasn't really necessarily broken out, we know what he is and we know what he can be for this team when they get things right. And so. They did hit on those two six-round wide receivers, it seems, last year. So potentially if they take a guy at the top. I agree that Drake May and his ability to kind of scramble around and make plays with his legs and play on time for the most part and get the ball out of his hands has helped this offensive line. And also it's been the fact that they've now started the same five guys in multiple weeks, not multiple weeks in a row, but in multiple weeks and are seemingly doing so. Heading into next week as well, Gerard Mayo says he has his fingers crossed to do that. So if it can be serviceable and they can make this work and make it happen, I don't think these five is going to be their full starting five next year, but it seems like it's not as much of a problem. And with a guy like Drake May, you want to surround him with the best talent to throw to. So I'm in on taking a receiver at the top, trade out of that pick if you have it up top. Maybe you don't even have to because maybe you end up closer to the top 10 or the top 15, depending on how they can get wins going together here. Back to the defense, Taylor, or to the defense rather. Is this Patriots D line? If it'll pull up for me, I don't know why it's not showing.
After this question, also do we want to do the injury report real quick?
Oh, did it come out?
Yeah,
let's do it.
All right, so did not participate. Marcella style expected Jaquelin Roy, who left the game with a neck injury. Sione Takitaki with a knee, and Dietrich Wise with a foot. Limited, we've got Kyle Duggar ankle, which is still better. Limited, he was at practice today participating in a padded practice. It could be a good sign for him. Daniel Aquale and Christian Ellis were both limited with abdomen injuries. Hunter Henry limited with a foot. Vidarian Lowe limited with a shoulder. Marte Mapu limited with a neck. Full participant once again, Alex Austin, after he was activated from IR with an ankle injury that he suffered. I think this is probably going to be the week that we see Alex Austin play because Marco Wilson hasn't been terribly impressive. I don't love his effort against the run. He's a high cut guy. He's, skinnier. So he's not just built really to take on the run very much, but it's one thing when you're Christian Gonzalez and, you're still willing and I'm never going to question your effort. It's more just like, yeah, I understand you not want to stick your face in the fire when you're a potential top 5 player at your position versus Marco Wilson when it's like, bro, you got John Jones and Marcus Jones, like taking on guards and firing downhill like their life depends on it. Alex Austin, I think, is much closer in that vein of being more like willing to stick his nose in there. Hopefully we see more of him. And the other guys, Daniel Aqualing, Christian Ellis, obviously pretty significant pieces in the front. Ellis didn't play last week, but if you don't have Taki, you kind of worry about the linebacker depth because they were already very shallow with just Taki. And Jaquelin Roy's been really good for them at nose tackle, left early-ish or midway through the game last week. So hopefully, he can figure out some way to make it out there to practice. Jeremiah Farms had a breakout game. I don't want to say necessarily because I think you need to string them together, but easily the best game of his career. So maybe that kind of offsets that. Marcellus style, Isaiah Bolden went in for him at gunner when he ended up getting hurt. And obviously with a concussion, unlikely it feels like that we'll see him, especially since he didn't participate today.
Yeah, they also forgot to add Isaiah Bolden. I believe.
Oh, damn. Well,
that'll be added. That's not. I was told that is not injury related, and then he'll be back on Thursday.
Okay.
Awesome. So sounds like Bolden will be good to go, and that he was just taking care of some things, and he'll be back again with the Patriots on Thursday. I'm sure they'll edit that up, but Dio was out with the concussion. Taki, I believe Taki left the game with a knee injury. Did he return? Do you know if he returned?
I'll look actually right now.
It's fine. I can't. Not a huge deal. Kyle Duggar, the big one. He's back at practice after missing the last couple games. So yeah, that is your Patriots injury report.
Let's see. He played 25 snaps. He left in the third quarter midway through and didn't come back.
Yeah, okay. So we'll see what happens there. But defense played pretty well last week, so hopefully they can continue that going. Speaking of that defense and the defensive line, Taylor, is this Patriots defensive line actually for real? 9 sacks last week, probably not going to happen again, but they were really solid last week against Chicago. So do you think this was just a function of the Chicago team, or do you think they can really get this thing going with the potential loss of Dietrich Wise this week? However, and I don't know if it'll be on Sunday against the Rams, but we heard from Gerard Mayo today, if anybody hasn't heard yet, that Christian Barmore may start practicing this week, if not next week, with the Patriots.
Yeah, so I don't think they're going to be getting 9 sacks a whole lot. That's a function of, one, the game, them finally getting to pin their ears back, first of all. There's been so few opportunities for this defense to know the pass is coming and be able to play that way. I will say that Keion White inside is one of the most disruptive players in the NFL this season. Anthony Jennings has been better rushing off the edge. Dietrich Wise, not the kind of guy who's going to have a lot of quick wins, but still someone who knows how to apply pressure, has done a better job keeping the quarterback in the pocket. But I think the reinforcements are really what excite me more. Like Yannick Ngakoue, I think, is going to be a significant difference on this defensive line with his pass rushing ability. He can win outside. He can win inside. He can win by going straight through you. And that's a level of versatility and juice that I don't think this defensive front has, especially with no Joshua Uche. Jeremiah Farms made some impact as well. He had some really impressive wins, as he kind of has throughout this season and even going back to late last season. With his really strong hands and his quickness off the line of scrimmage. So I still think the pass rush is probably an issue, but I mean, dude, if you get Yannick Ngakoue back and Christian Barmore, I'm thinking that things are going to look a lot different, because if you have Barmore and Keion White rushing inside at the same time, that's the kind of thing I was hoping we were going to get this season, where I don't really, basically, if you're on the edge, just play contained, because that quarterback is going to try to escape, because those dudes are going to wreak absolute havoc. So I do think the pass rush is taking a step forward. Keion White mentioned that their chemistry is getting better, and I've seen that in their line games, the way they use blitzes and try to create disruption and then just keep the quarterback hemmed in. I'm sure we'll see that this week with Matthew Stafford. So, and it's not a very good Rams offensive line either, so hopefully they can capitalize on that.
Yeah, I'm excited for the addition of Yannick Ngakoue. I think it was a smart addition for them on a low risk, high reward type of thing, where, you know, they claim him off waivers, and yeah, you have that top priority because of your poor record. But you see what happens. It's a contract year. It's not like you owe him a ton of money. He was asked today about potentially being a part of this team's future. And he said that they haven't talked about it, but Mayo mentioned it, that, you know, it could be something for now and moving forward. And we talked about it on our stand-up down in Foxborough. That'll be up on the channel a little later on. But Taylor, you mentioned this week that he's 29. That's the age that they signed Matthew Judon to his long deal. So if
also
he can get
the Ravens when he
right.
and Ngakoue were teammates.
Yeah. And so if he can get that, you know, the 2017 version of himself, which obviously that was the long way away. That's, you know, 7 years ago at this point when he made a Pro Bowl. I believe it was his second season in Jacksonville, but he's going to get a lot of opportunities, I would think, this week. Someone who can obviously pin his ears back as a pass rusher, but they've also mentioned that, you know, he can do more and play solidly in the run game. So we'll see what happens if he can be a veteran presence on this team moving forward. We spoke to him today. Seems like a, you know, sort of a stand-up guy, not somebody who he seems like he wants to be here, even though he's been kind of thrown in from a 7-3 Ravens team to a 3-7 Patriots team. So we'll see what happens, but I like the move. I think it made sense for them to kind of add some additional veteran leadership on that side of the football. All right, let's talk about the Rams, Taylor. Do you think the Patriots and this offensive line have a plan to stop Jared Verse and the rest? We'll add the rest of this Rams front seven.
Yeah, Darian Lowe. No,
okay.
He has been solid. Honestly, he has struggled the past couple of weeks, especially with like line games and slants inside. Those are some areas I need to see him get fixed. I think the plan is to get the ball out fast, to be honest. Like, this Rams front is so disruptive. Jared Verse, I think, is only Trey Hendrickson has more pressures over the last month. Braden Fiske and Kobe Turner are like both top 3. I think Kobe Turner's number 1 in unblocked pressures. One, because of their line games. They use a ton of those on dropbacks. Also, Braden Fiske is just so, or Fisk, I hope I'm saying his name right. It's just so quick.
I think it's Fisk.
Yeah, I think so too. So quick, so disruptive with his hands. Then you got Byron Young and Jared Verse. Like, there's not a whole lot of weaknesses on this Rams front. And that's what Gerard Mayo told us. He said, this is one of the best defensive fronts that we've seen all year. Even though they're young, they're disruptive, they're well coordinated and all those things. I do think they're leaky against scrambles. Tua Tagovailoa converted 3 third downs on scrambles. One was like a 3rd and 26 or something, and one was like a 3rd and 19. Some really long yarded situations. As aggressive as they are, that sometimes does leave the edge open for quarterbacks. So hopefully Drake May can make some plays happen with his feet. Hopefully he gets the ball out fast, but you got to run at these guys, which is not going to be easy, but you got to try to wear them down just with those body blows. Like, you're getting 3-4 yards a pop like last week, that's fine. You just need to assert some dominance on the ground, or some physicality at least, to make things easier, because this can't be another game where Drake May drops like 40 times or he's going to get his shit rocked. I'm just going to be very honest with you.
Yeah, no, that you're right. That front is really solid. Some young guys, some older veterans in there as well. But obviously Fisk and Verse able to play. They both went to Florida State. Is that right? They took both of those guys out of Florida State. I
think they were teammates. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I like that. So yeah,
I remember the Rams drafted them, and there was a video where they like actually. I think it was either when they drafted one of them and the other was already there or something like that. But that was really cool.
Yeah, that was cool. And so, yeah, I think, again, with this offensive line sort of coming, getting themselves into shape and really, sort of hitting the ground running, if you will. I don't want to give them too much credit because it still hasn't been perfect. But for the ragtag sort of way that it's been brought in, like DeMontre Jacobs, right, and Ben Brown, who haven't been with the team all season. Michael Jordan, who didn't make the initial roster, kind of a practice squad futures contract guy. For who they are, Vidarian Lowe, replacement level left tackle, like solid, like really solid the last couple weeks, and they're really getting it together. So good for them. And yeah, they should have a plan, obviously, for Jared Verse. I want to talk about Kendrick
specifically real quick. I just want to mention, because I spoke to him today about his bounce back and what was behind it. He did mention that it was the ankle injury, which kept him limited, I think, the previous few weeks.
Yeah.
Last week, he was a full participant. And he was saying that he's really somebody who learns through repetition and learns through practice. So missing reps, I think, was significant for him and impacted his play. So really cool. And he's a really easy guy to root for. Like, he's a good dude. He's kind of bounced around the league, but clearly has some talent. Like, obviously, he's not the kind of guy you want as a starter long term, but he's been a good spot starter for them, obviously, when healthy. So good to see that he's back on the mend. Hopefully, he and Vidarian Lowe can continue to improve.
Yeah, and I like that. That'll allow them to keep Mike on the right side of the line. If he's healthy and playing like he was at the beginning of the season. So keep that going there. All right. We'll keep going in a second, but before we do, quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks. Taylor, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players to win a shot at up to 100 times your cash. So if you're into this kind of stuff, run your game all season long with myself and Taylor Kyles on PrizePicks. We give our Pats Daily picks every single week from Gillette Stadium in the Patriots' upcoming game. We also hit on all of the primetime games across the NFL as well. NBA picks, NBA Cup, that's coming in shortly. You can get in on all of the major sports on the PrizePicks app, and you can win, like I said, up to 100 times your money. They put their members first as well. Withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. So when your picks hit, you get your money in as little as 15 minutes. And they also offer Venmo now for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. And if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive that bonus. It is guaranteed. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, that is PrizePicks. Now, let's talk about Kendrick Bourne a little bit, Taylor. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know we were speaking about it a little bit earlier on what he had to say with Mark Daniels from Mass Live today. So I'm curious if you can loop that into sort of the answer to this question. Do you think Kendrick Bourne will play this week? And how do you think we'll talk about Drake May after. I kind of want to get to Kendrick Bourne first because he took over those KJ Osborne took over his snaps last week, and Kendrick Bourne took a whopping 0 offensive snaps. He mentioned today, like you said with Mark, that he understands sort of why it happened and that he hasn't been playing his best. But do you think they'll end up giving him another chance, or do you think he's going to ride the bench another week longer?
I think it depends on practice, honestly. I don't think this is like a punishment or anything, but I do
Right.
think it's acknowledgement that he wasn't playing well enough. We talked about that on the show against the Titans. Yeah, it was his most productive game this season, but also twice he didn't run to his depth during the scramble drill. He admitted that he should have been running around more, which if he said it, I would be surprised if the coaches didn't bring that up. And, I want to see more from him. It's nice that, again, he took that step forward, but it clearly wasn't enough. And the coaches wanted to go with KJ Osborne, who also hasn't really done much. And it's not a real great indictment on him either. So, and obviously he didn't do a whole lot in the game. So I think the Patriots genuinely do want to play their young guys and give them just experience and get over whatever they're going through. Like I know Jalen Polk and Kayshon Boutte were the main guys in 2 receiver sets, whereas before it was Boutte and Kendrick Bourne. Then it looked like in 3 receiver sets, you saw more of KJ Osborne. So I think this week, we will see more of Kendrick Bourne in that Z role with KJ Osborne. But if we don't see him in that, I think it's an indictment that he didn't have. It was another week where he didn't have a very good practice. And the whole KJ Osborne situation is weird to me. I thought they were going to cut him now that, he finally can go wherever he wants, but maybe they just want to see Kendrick Bourne kind of get his feet back under him and be more consistent. So I guess we'll see, but I think there's definitely a possibility that he gets his job back, but in a rotational role.
Yeah, and on that, I think that's what you want to see because they did just sign him to a 3-year deal. It's not this one and done season like you have with KJ Osborne, where I don't want to say it doesn't matter how he plays well or not, but really it has nothing to do with your future, what happens with KJ Osborne this season, where it may with Kendrick Bourne. So to piggyback on that, here's another question from our friend Old Man Mob. What are the chances Kendrick Bourne is traded this offseason? I know you don't like to give chances, but I guess what do you think of the idea of trading Kendrick Bourne this offseason?
If you get your legit veteran, you can play that X role.
Yeah.
Jalen Polk finishes the season strong for you. Absolutely. I think Kendrick Bourne, his deal is pretty easy to get out of. That was one of the best things when he signed. It was this is almost kind of like more of a 1-2 year deal. And if he doesn't show anything, they can really cut themselves off scot-free. So, yeah, I think if they get that veteran and the young guys emerge, I don't think Kendrick Bourne – I know he wants to be part of the, rebuild and everything, and awesome for him. But at the same time, you're a pro and you want to play. And if there's 4 young receivers that are looking pretty good and there's a veteran who's probably not going to leave the field very often, it's just a numbers game at that point. And I think that Kendrick Bourne would be like, hey, I appreciate you guys. I love the time here, but I would just rather go somewhere where I'll have more of an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, whether he plays or doesn't, right? If he does play, then that gives teams some tape on, hey, this is what this guy can still do, and then you can trade him out of here that way. Or if he doesn't play this season, and then you do go get a veteran, or you do draft another guy, where does Kendrick Bourne fit in there? So at that point, you may cut bait and try and get what you can. It does stink because this offseason, he mentioned wanting to be a captain. He obviously worked hard and came back strong after the torn ACL last year, but so far it just hasn't worked out for him. He's obviously now getting to the older side of his career. Not that he's washed up or anything. I still think he has some decent football left, but it's going to come down to numbers in this room with guys like Baker and Pop, obviously, and Jalen Polk and Kayshon Boutte coming on now. It's like, where does KB fit in this mix, especially if you draft and if you sign someone, he might be on the outside looking in. So obviously it's going to come down to how they go about, free agency and the draft and whatnot. But you wonder if KB's days are numbered in Foxborough. All right, one more wide receiver.
I'll say, there's a lot of revisionist history going on with their re-signings. Everyone was on board with the players they re-signed. You could have argued they should have signed Pharaoh Brown and Mac Wilson or whatever. No one was upset with the re-signings they made. It was seen as yes, these are guys who want to be here, who have actually been part of the reason you've been good. But now, obviously, Kendrick Bourne's coming off a torn ACL. Mike Kadlick was re-signed, but he's moving back and forth. I think he's just been in his head and admitted that he hasn't been as dominant as he wants. So I just, I feel like the further we get from the offseason, the more people forget, one, it wasn't a very good free agent class, and they got pretty much universal praise for keeping their guys who were actually plus contributors and getting rid of the guys who weren't doing much or who kind of just felt like they needed a clean break.
No, the internal signings were fine. The external ones, obviously, Taki hasn't played much. You lose out on Leverett and Chuk, so those weren't great. But the internal ones, Tavai, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, obviously, you mentioned Onwenu. They extend David Andrews. You wonder how that works out. But they kept that core together from the Belichick era and tried to sort of bring at least the leadership over. And I think all of them have worked out so far besides really Kendrick Bourne. So, but back on the receivers here, Taylor. What do you make of the Javon Baker stuff? Do you think we're going to end up seeing more of him on offense? I wasn't able to take much of a look at his film last week. I know that 2 weeks ago when they lost to the Titans, he had played a couple snaps and gotten open on every play. What did you see from Baker this week? And do you think we'll end up seeing a little bit more out of him than just returning kicks?
Yeah, so he only played 4 snaps against the Bears, and all of them were run blocking snaps, which was not what I wanted to see personally, because, I was talking about Javon and how he was open downfield. I'm not really sure what's going on there, to be totally honest with you. It is kind of a mystery to me that he isn't getting more opportunities at Z. That being said, Kayshon Boutte, or X, I'm sorry, but Kayshon Boutte really has been more of their X receiver. Now, that said, you're clearly looking for a reliable number 3 behind, Kayshon Boutte and Demario Douglas. Jalen Polk's been fine, but I would like to see maybe Kayshon Boutte more at that Z role and then Javon Baker at the X, because it's a much better spot for him. Like Kayshon Boutte, I really like as a player, and I think he gets open pretty consistently, but he was getting locked up at times. Like Tyreek Stevenson and and Jalen Johnson are really they're long, they're physical, like those are ideal outside corners. And it really showed why Kayshon Boutte's better as a guy who can operate off the line of scrimmage, because there just wasn't a lot he could do. He's 5'11, almost like 195, 200 pounds. Like he's thick, but he's not as long or as big as you want against those kinds of matchups. Javon's kind of similar in size, but he's a little bit taller, and I think he's better when it comes to his releases and his quickness, especially when this comes to his vertical speed. So I don't know when we're going to see more of Javon. I thought we would this week, so now I'm kind of stumped. I think, again, it's just going to maybe depend on practice. I don't even think, but yeah, that's really all I got, because there wasn't any tape to go off of him getting open against the Bears.
Yeah, okay. So then moving into Kayshon Boutte against the Rams. How do you think he matches up this weekend against this Los Angeles Rams secondary?
I haven't studied the secondary very close yet. I'm still really on the defensive front right now. And I'll have, obviously, in the preview, we're going to do a joint preview tomorrow, myself with Pat Speak, because Mike's not going to be around. But I will say, I just think Kayshon Boutte has earned Drake May's trust. Like, we're seeing he's kind of starting to lean into, like, he had a season-high 4 catches. It really should have been 5, if we're being honest. It was wiped away by a penalty. But it looks like he's someone that Drake May really trusts. And between him and Demario Douglas and Hunter Henry, those are really the only 3 guys that feel like they're getting consistent looks from Drake May. So how does Boutte stack up with the cornerbacks? To be honest, I can't tell you that for sure. Even looking at the depth chart, I'm not really familiar with a lot of those guys.
Sure.
But Kayshon Boutte, I do think, is still going to see, at least 3 or 4 targets from Drake May. And then hopefully they can get more going downfield, because they've struggled to do that the past couple weeks, mostly because of pressure and Drake May having to throw on the run.
Yeah, I like the sort of the chemistry, connectedness, if you will, that him and Drake May have developed here. So, like, thinking more towards the future, and the way Boutte has really taken to coaching and taking to this new I hate using the word regime. It's so buzzwordy now. It sounded good in my, in the early stages of this thing, but now it's just like, oh, here we go. Maybe we'll go with administration. The new administration here.
Presidential, and
that is very presidential. But yeah, that's fine. But the new leadership, if you will, with Mayo and Wolf and the new coaching staff, what have you, it wasn't great with him and Belichick here, and he's really taken on that. So looking towards the future, if they can stack this thing up with another big time X receiver, he can then transition to the Z, like you just said. So you have a Z receiver in Boutte who you have trust with. Then you have your true go-to guy on the other side, pop in the slot. Now we're sort of cooking here. Jalen Polk as a veteran. Jalen Polk, Javon Baker as some depth guys that you can sort of start building this thing out with. So it's exciting what they have in Boutte, and I think he'll benefit even more when he's not that sort of go-to guy that he's had to be with Drake May. Yep. All right, let's go to one more here on the offense. Then we'll do our game time read, and then we'll go rapid fire through the rest of them. And I'm curious on your thoughts, Taylor, with Jaheim Bell. Just trying to read this. Few reports have talked about the progress Bell has made when it comes to blocking. Do you believe he will continue to get more offensive snaps behind Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper? Austin Hooper, Patriots leading receiver last week. We were talking about it on the pregame show where they activated Mitchell Wilcox. Jaheim Bell is starting to get some playing time. You thought Austin Hooper might be the odd man out in this whole thing. He ends up being their leading receiver. But what do you make of Jaheim Bell's progress? What do you think they can do with him moving forward?
I think his role is going to be consistent, to be honest. He gets like 4 or 5 snaps a game. He did throw his best block, I think, of his career on one of Ramondre Stevenson's positive carries down in the red zone. But yeah, just until I see more, I can't really predict that we're going to see more from Jaheim Bell, because it's pretty much been the same thing anytime he's active and actually playing.
Yeah, that's fair. I would like to see more of it, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And he needs to figure out, like we talked about before, he's gotten better on the mental side and getting things going on that front, but still need to kind of button it up before you give him a ton of playing time. So, all right, let's talk about game time, and then we will finish up this mailbag edition of Patriots Daily. Let's see. Right now, we're going to do a live look at the Game Time app and find out how much it's going to cost you all to get in to Gillette Stadium this Sunday against the Los Angeles Rams. Oh, it's only a lowly $78 right now on the Game Time app. So make sure, if you're going to head to the stadium this weekend, head to Game Time. They have the Game Time Picks feature. It filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Like, they have the super deals, they have the great deals. Game Time Picks is obviously their top future. They also have all-in pricing, so you can toggle that on, and it shows you only the total price, so you won't be hit with any surprise fees as you check out. You can also check out your seat view, panoramic views from your seats in the app before you buy. Not all ticketing apps have that, but Game Time does. They also have their lowest price guarantee. If you don't have the lowest price through Game Time, they will credit you up to 110% of the difference. So again, if you're going to head to Foxborough this weekend, download the Game Time app to do so, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Taylor, what time is it?
Game time.
Good answer. It is game time. It is also time to wrap up the mailbag with a couple more. I don't want to call them rapid fire questions. We're not really on a huge time crunch, but we'll go through a couple before we get out of here. And the first one, it's a simple one. What's the news on Cole Strange? Because I mentioned Christian Barmore earlier in the episode. Gerard Mayo mentioned him and Cole Strange he was asked about those two guys as people who are injured with this team. Mentioned that Barmore could be back either this week or next week on the practice field. Said he is a little farther ahead than Cole Strange, I believe. However, Chris Price of the Boston Globe reported last week that Strange is close-ish. I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but him and Mark Daniels have both said that Strange is around the corner to return to the Patriots. So that's the news on Strange, but I'll kind of give it the floor to you, Taylor, to think or to say what you think could be added to this offensive line if they do end up getting Strange back. Do you think they plug him in? Do you think they try and shoehorn him into this starting 5 offensive line, or do you think they keep him as a reserve?
Well, let's think about it. So Gerard Mayo said that Christian Barmore was further ahead than Cole Strange. So Barmore could be a practice this week or it could be next week. So let's assume it's next week, right? So that's going to be week 12, gets activated, probably isn't going to play that same week, so maybe we give it another week. So most likely we see Christian Barmore probably after the bye.
Mm-hmm.
If Cole Strange isn't ready by then, he only has 3 weeks to even be activated. So you'd think, again, if you're going to be activated, they're probably going to give him another week to get his feet under him because he hasn't played football since last year. What's he going to play for you? 2 games, maybe? Like, unless Ben Brown is playing poorly, I think it would be irresponsible to mess with the chemistry for a player who, again, is only going to play a couple, maybe 3 games for you and hasn't played in so long and is coming off a serious injury. So it was exciting, the possibility that Cole could play. And you know what? Maybe by that point, maybe Ben Brown gets exposed or something and they do need an upgrade and they're like, you know what? We might as well try it. Mm-hmm. But they said it's very frustrating that there hasn't been a lot of consistency with the offensive line. I think they're not really saying it. They've been answering questions pretty well, but I'm sure that they're not happy about it if the coaches are saying they don't love it. So realistically, I feel like the closer we get, especially now knowing that Barmore is further ahead than Cole, I just don't feel great about the possibility of him playing more than like a game or 2.
So let's play a hypothetical here then,
That's
because
center,
yeah, of course. You mentioned earlier that he was, a first-round pick that they drafted more so for need rather than value. With that first-round pick comes the potential for a 5th-year option. Now, this is Strange's 3rd season. He heads into his 4th next year. Do they send him into a lame duck year? Do they pick up that option? I don't know what the number will be, so that's kind of a
I
tough
think it's just
question.
going to be the average per lineman. It's not even the position. It's like even he'll get paid like I think whatever the tackles make as well.
So is it worth adding a 5th year to his deal, or do you think you just play out that 4th year? If let's say he doesn't play this season, you can't pick up his option, right? You have to just let the season play out.
No way. Yeah, no, I think you got
Yeah.
it. You have Jake Andrews on the roster as well, who's
Right.
like an actual center that you drafted with like a not high pick, but like a decent pick. So yeah, I don't think you pick up.
I don't think you can do it. I think there's too much. It's too much of a raise, I think, for a guy that's such an unknown. Yeah, you play out next season, and if it works, then you extend your arm and you extend him and give him what he's worth. But I don't think you can go off of that with such a mystery there.
You can get him on a 1-year prove-it deal probably
Exactly.
after the 4th season if you really need to, because there's not enough tape for him to really have much of a market.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's talk lineman. Ronnie Stanley. Not much about him in this free agency class. Should the Patriots go after him as their new left tackle number 1?
Obviously, it's an upgrade, so I wouldn't be against it. But at the same time, like even if you look last year, when I looked at Vidarian Lowe's pressure rate allowed on the left side, I think it was better than Ronnie Stanley's. Now, that number can be deceiving. I haven't watched enough tape to be able to say why that was different. I'm also sure that Ronnie Stanley's a better run blocker, where Vidarian Lowe's been pretty up and down. But again, you have a guy who's a veteran, who's been in your system, who's going to be under contract for another year. I think it makes way more sense to invest in a young guy and try to develop him behind the scenes without the pressure than it does to bring in another veteran who has to play for you. And then it's like Vidarian's kind of sitting there, well, like, all right, I played good football for you. I grew and I did everything you asked. And now you're going to bench me when I gave up like one.
Right.
Sack
I don't know
on the season.
Okay.
Like that just doesn't sit. You talk about developing players and all that stuff and upgrade. I just don't know if that's the move.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know if we lost you or if I got cut out for a second there. It was kind of shaky for a second, but you have me back now, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. That was weird, but yeah, I'm with you. I find it hard to believe that Baltimore's just going to let him walk too. You have Lamar Jackson. I don't know what their cap situation looks like, obviously, but Lamar Jackson making a ton of money. I think you keep his left tackle with him if you can. All right. I want to give you the floor here because you called this out when they did their Longhorn package this week with well, I guess it doesn't necessarily completely correlate, but I want to give you the floor on that too, where
I'll take it.
Yeah, do you think they'll keep playing Jonathan Jones at safety if Alex Austin does end up returning to the quarterback room? And I say that because Brendan Schooler was playing some safety last week in what they call the Longhorn package as a spy on the quarterback. Jonathan Jones did that against Lamar Jackson a couple years ago. Taylor called it out before we spoke to Jonathan Jones today, and Jones then mentioned it out of the blue today. So courtesy or good job, Taylor, for calling that out. But what do you make of the idea of John Jones playing safety the rest of the season?
I liked it, honestly. Gave them a lot of versatility where in the packages, like he could go down in the slot if he wanted to. He could be the free safety. It allowed other guys to be in positions where I think they're better, like Jalen Hawkins and Del Pettis, keeping them closer to the line of scrimmage. So yeah, I think that's going to continue to be a thing, especially with Kyle Duggar's situation. You don't really know what's going to happen. Maybe if he comes back, that affects it. But also, like John Jones hasn't really been playing Duggar's roles. He's more because Duggar obviously is that guy you want kind of in the slot. But I think if you're putting your best players out there, that's kind of hard to justify not having a grouping with Duggar and John Jones as opposed to, Marte, who didn't even play on early downs last week, and then Jalen Hawkins and Del Pettis. As much as you like them, like Duggar acknowledged that him being out gave some other guys more opportunities, with Del Pettis and Marte Mapu obviously being the big names there. And then Alex Austin, like I said, I'd like to see him play over Marco Wilson. I think they just want that rotation at corner. Like I asked Marcus Jones today why he wasn't playing more, and he was just like, I just play the snaps I play.
Yeah.
I just want to know if you were going to give me any insight, but that's totally understandable of an answer. They, for whatever reason, they rotate him, and I know, like, I think Andy Gresh was saying that, like, he can't defend the run, and teams are going to like seeing him on the outside, and slot corner protects you from the run, which is literally the opposite. A slot corner basically takes on the role of a linebacker.
Right.
But to that point, the bigger thing was that Marcus Jones, like every single week, has some really impressive play against the run where he's like shedding a block or coming up like full speed and making a tackle. So I think he's better in that regard than Alex Austin and Marco Wilson, which is why I'd like to see him on the field always. But maybe there's some injury considerations. I don't know. He also is on the punt return, so I don't know if that factors in at all. But yeah, Alex Austin, I'd just like to maybe see cut into Marco Wilson snaps.
Yeah. All right. I want to finish the mailbag with this because Patriots start the season 1-6. They've now won 2 out of their last 3, and they're going for a win streak this week. I don't know if you can believe it. Patriots last week had the number 1 pick after their loss to Tennessee, according to Tagathon. After their win against Chicago this weekend, they ended up like just outside of the playoff hunt. So it's kind of funny how many bad teams there are after that, that big jump in the NFL. But 2 out of 3 playing strong. Gerard Mayo says this is the kind of football they want to play. Mentioned on the radio this week that he wants to be the team that nobody in the league wants to play. So what do you think has changed for the Patriots over these last 3 games where they win 2, they lose 1 in overtime? They clearly are playing a better brand of football than they were at the beginning of the season.
I think part of it has been, like last week, obviously, was the run game. They didn't have a run game the 2 games before that, but I do think that it coming back, like we've mentioned, open up the playbook. Obviously, Drake May. I know Jacoby Brissett won the game for them with some pretty incredible efforts. I think Kayshon Boutte emerging has been a pretty big part of that as well in terms of the passing game, at least. And then I think defensively, they've been better against the run. Like, it wasn't perfect in those games, obviously. Took some body blows, or really bad in overtime against the Titans. But if you look at the numbers, they've been pretty solid against the run the past few weeks. I think the pass rush is slowly starting to tick in the right direction. And coverage has been pretty good throughout. The only issue has been that real second level when they get attacked on inside routes. But even that hasn't been quite as bad. Like Jelani Tavai had a really nice robot where he got underneath a crossing route from Keenan Allen to kind of force Caleb Williams off his spot. So I think the second level being a little bit better in coverage. I think the defensive line starting to put it together. And then I think obviously the pass protection, in the first 2 games was better, but then the run defense opening up was the big thing. But in general, I just think they're playing better. Like, they're executing at a more acceptable level. The Titans still were like a pretty significant blip on the radar there. But those are really the big improvements that I've seen.
Yeah, I just think I'm with you, and I think they've just been able to settle down across the board. They have their answer now at quarterback, where it was such a question mark when and if they would make the transition from Jacoby. The offensive line has found some consistency finally, where you're not shuffling guys in and out all the time. Yeah, you had the blip on the radar you just mentioned with the Titans with Layden Robinson versus Mike Onwenu and that whole shuffle. But in general, that's settled down. I think defensively, they had a lot of injuries. Juwan Bentley goes down. Obviously, Jabril Peppers is not an injury, but that's a different situation. And David Andrews goes down as well. So there's been injuries offensively and defensively. And they've sort of found themselves as far as leadership goes. And as far as on-field play, where, you get used to playing with guys, then they go down. And, their skill being gone doesn't help, but also the chemistry and consistency and the same guys out there and being used to playing with people goes away as well. So they've just sort of found themselves and they've settled down a little bit. And I think that's massive, and I think that's what's going to propel them hopefully throughout the rest of the season. Now, I don't think they're going to go rattle off a bunch of wins. I still don't think they're a great football team, but they at least sort of seem to have a little bit of an identity, which I think is good, and I think will give fans, players, and coaches some hope moving forward. So we'll see what happens. But it is exciting. I feel like they finally sort of found an identity that they can keep building off of.
Also want to credit Marcus Jones's returns. He's had like a big return in all of these games. That's been another huge part of it, him giving them better field position.
Yeah, special teams has been solid. Jeremy Springer. You know what? Actually, I lied. Jeremy Springer, I don't know if you saw my tweet, but remember when I mentioned on the post-game show that Jeremy Springer was fired up about Brendan Schooler's sack?
Yeah.
It wasn't Jeremy Springer. It ended up being Drew Wilkins and Dante Hightower. They showed Drew Wilkins really fast, and I assumed that they were panicked. Jeremy Springer wasn't him. But yeah, special teams has been pretty good too. I know Bryce has been up and down, but Schooler's bringing it not only as a gunner and as a special teams guy, but also now as a defensive player as well. So that's going to do it for our mailbag edition. Rams week. Taylor will be back with the Patriots beat guys tomorrow. I am on work with Sports Illustrated tomorrow. So again, I'll be in and out of the podcast, but I'm not going anywhere just yet. So again, I appreciate you guys all giving me the kind words, both on Twitter and in the chat today. But not going anywhere. I'll still be on Patriots Daily here with with Taylor on Patriots Press Pass. So, yeah, we'll have a crossover with Taylor, Brian, and Alex tomorrow. And then we'll be back pregame and postgame on Sunday as the Patriots take on the Rams from Foxborough. So thanks for watching. We appreciate all the interactions both in the chat and on Twitter for your questions. So until next time, thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everyone.